The second he touched the mysterious lyre, Volpan felt an ancient power flowing through him. Reality fractured and exploded into an infinite number of worlds, all identical and yet somehow distinct.
At first glance, Foretales is a simple card game that's all about turn-based combat and puzzle solving. In reality, however, this new indie title is a deceptively deep and immersive adventure, where your actions and decisions can completely change the story as you navigate branching realities that turn the story itself into one massive puzzle. Before we get started, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more indie gameplay and pre-release reviews. This is a small channel, so every person makes a huge difference. Anyways, let's get right back into today's review. The story of Foretales begins with Volpan, a shoebill with a knack for thievery, who accepts a job from a mysterious contact to steal an artifact known as the Lyre. The beginning section of the game serves as the tutorial for Foretales' unique card interaction system, which we'll get into a little later. Completing this tutorial and stealing the artifact sets the real story into motion, as your character is now haunted by visions of the future and the impending end of the world.
Everything was going to disappear.
Traversal through the game's story is controlled by a series of vision and mission cards. Visions are major events in the story that are time-sensitive, counting down every time you complete a mission until you either prevent it from happening or suffer the consequences of taking too long, which varies depending on the event itself. On the other hand, missions are the actual gameplay sections that you play through to experience the game's story. While every mission is helpful and seemingly necessary for your quest, there just isn't enough time to experience all of them before these visions come true. This forces you to make hard decisions at every junction as to what path you'll take through the game's story, affecting which companions, events, and important items you'll find along your journey. So now you know what you're doing, but the real core of the gameplay is how you're doing it. Missions are all set on a physical table, with environment and story cards placed face up in front of you and in a rotating deck of cards. Using your hand made up of character-specific cards, you'll navigate these environments and balance resources that you gain or spend depending on what actions you use on specific cards. Think of it like an RPG game, but condensed into card form. If you see a market, you could steal gold from it, you could trade your gold for food, you could track down mercenaries to interact with, and so much more depending on what characters you have in your party at the time. You'll also be using this system to solve creative puzzles in each mission, utilizing everything from the positioning of the cards to specific character interactions to progress in each area. Thankfully, the developers have programmed a hint system into the game as well to help with these sometimes cryptic solutions, so don't feel too much pressure if the puzzles aren't your thing. While you progress through these environment cards, there's a chance that enemies will spawn on a tile, preventing you from accessing what's underneath and bringing us into the combat portion of the game. Taking a similar approach as games like Undertale, Foretales can and is encouraged to be played without killing any enemies, and instead using your resources and abilities to make them run away from combat. Gold, fame, and grim are universally spent to buy off guards and thieves, but specific enemy types have other weaknesses that can be used as well if you keep your eye out for them. Every group of enemies has a morale level, and bringing this morale down to 0 by removing enemies from the board makes the rest run away from combat, adding a layer of strategy that lets you maneuver out of dangerous situations by draining morale without having to lift a finger in actual combat. Resource management plays an important part if you want to experience the game how it was meant to be played, as too much killing can bring consequences further down the line, so it's important to keep yourself stocked up as you journey through missions. Although Foretales is entirely told through cards and dialogue, I was delightfully surprised at just how immersive the experience was despite these self-imposed limitations. There are so many little details that, when combined, make you forget you're even playing a card game. The tables you're playing on and the music changes to match the environment for your mission. Characters talk to and interact with each other, the narrator comments on actions and events, and the illustrations on the cards provide context and visual information instead of only being used for decoration. When I really got into the flow of gameplay, Foretales had me lost in my imagination to the same degree as reading a good book.
Leader of the Sanguinaires.
Now, this is a little bit of a spoiler for future story and gameplay elements, so feel free to skip this section if you really want, but one of the major points that escalated Foretales in my eyes was actually when I failed my first playthrough. Instead of a game over screen like you'd expect, Volpan is sent into another reality to start the game over with all of his memories from the first run. This newly introduced gameplay mechanic brings with it a host of new ways to interact with the game. You can use this ability to discover new things by taking a completely different approach to the story, or use the knowledge from previous runs to change how missions and story beats play out from before. New runs through the game's story are more than just replaying the game as well. My first playthrough took me through a more traditional adventure, gathering a few companions and fighting against corruption and cultists throughout the journey, while on my second playthrough, I was fighting the cult from the inside as a member, growing in the ranks and gathering a completely different set of companions on my journey. Even more massive changes came after that, as I unraveled the game's secrets from multiple perspectives, along with more ways to break the traditional story in ways I didn't expect. What seemed like a pretty straightforward adventure turned into a deep, reality-bending narrative, and I found myself only enjoying the experience more and more as I continued playing and discovering new ways to experience the story. While there is potential to get a little burnt out replaying the first few missions multiple times, especially at points where you need to farm out resources for enemy encounters, this is the only negative feeling from the experience I can think of, and even then, the game changes up dialogue and even provides shortcuts to skip to exactly where you need to be after a couple of runs. I know this sounds more like one of my You Should Play videos than an actual review, but I honestly and thoroughly enjoyed my time with Foretales. The only downsides of the gameplay is that the most interesting aspect of it is locked behind the several hours it'll take you to end the first playthrough. Aside from a couple of bugs where the same dialogue would play twice in a row, Foretales is really well built on a technical level that matches the attention to detail that's present in every other aspect of the title. It even ran flawlessly on my Steam Deck, for those of you that got your hands on one of those. The gameplay is dynamic and innovative. The art style of the cards and their cohesion with the 3D space are really well executed, and the engaging story is constantly evolving to keep you on your toes. For all of these reasons, and others, I'm giving Foretales an 8.9 out of 10, and I highly recommend giving it a shot, even if card games aren't necessarily your thing. Thank you for watching today's review. If you have any questions or comments about the game, I'm always active in the comments, so feel free to talk to me there. Again, please like the video and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this, plus hit that little bell icon to be notified every time I release a new video. You can also find me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all at MisspelledMoos, where I post about gaming, art projects, and random nonsense, so check those out. Links are in the description down below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.